Now, one event which happened today and will, of course, impinge upon the weekend, the appointment of a new Wolves manager, Terry Connor. Sorry? What did I hear you say? Who is Terry Connor? Well, I'll tell you what, good job I've got Darren Lewis in the studio. Darren, perhaps you could answer that question. Who is Terry Connor?
Well, he's been Mick McCarthy's assistant for the last 4.5 years. He played for 5 Football League clubs. He's a very safe pair of hands as far as the club are concerned. They like him very much there. What he's going to do is he's going to take control for the remainder of the season, largely because they've gone through 4 or 5 candidates for the job, including Alan Kirbishley twice. And they just have not been able to appoint the right man.
Why is that? Come on, Wolves are potentially a very big club in this country to offer a manager the opportunity of a platform to do things in the Premiership.
Well, I think the key word there is potentially. I mean, what they're offering, the man coming in is around about 150 grand to keep them in the Premier League. Now, when you compare that to the money on offer to some of the other managers at some of the other clubs, it's a pittance, really. Also, the basic wage is very small indeed.
What would it be? $500,000 a year?
If they're lucky.
Right.
I think you're talking about around about half of that.
What, £250,000 a year?
Apparently so. Apparently it's very, very minuscule, and a lot of managers turning their nose up.
Let's put this into perspective, by the way. You know, very, very few people earn that sort of money.
Indeed.
But in the legions of Premier League managers, for instance, I would imagine somebody like Davy Moyes is on a couple of million a year, or $2.5 million, or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just look at the Wolves situation. Bear in mind, now Walter Smith, who's not been in work. We know he's done a good job at Rangers. We know he did a good job when he was at Everton.
Yeah.
He said, I don't want the job. I'm not interested in the job. He was totally underwhelmed by the offer that they put to him. Alan Kirbishley's been out of the game for 3.5 years. Good opportunity for him to come back. As you say, Wolves a big club in this country, potentially a big club. Didn't want to go there. They went to him twice and he wasn't interested. And my big issue with this is I blame the fans, because I believe that a lot of fans have to remember you have to be careful what you wish for.
Right.
The fans hounded out Mick McCarthy despite the fact that he'd done a good job there.
Yeah.
There seems to be this belief that if you get rid of a Mick McCarthy, you can get a Martin O'Neill or a Mark Hughes. Guys who need money, who want money to buy players.
The fans don't ultimately decide on the manager's fate. The chairman does, Steve Morgan.
Well, this is my other point, because I think Steve Morgan is a grandstander, somebody who goes into to clubs and plays to the gallery. This is a guy who almost bought Liverpool, remember?
Yeah, and didn't, because Liverpool made a terrible mistake.
No, I don't think they did.
They made a terrible mistake.
I don't think
they did, because they sold it to 2 Americans who nearly brought the club to its knees.
Well, indeed. I agree with that. I agree with that point. But you look at the way Steve Morgan's conducting himself, going into dressing rooms and trying to berate players in front of the manager.
Mr. Abramovich does that. I mean, Steve Morgan's put his money where his mouth is.
No. Abramovich doesn't do that.
He has on occasion.
Abramovich has never berated the manager in front of the players.
No, he's
never
been into
ever
dressing
done
room,
that.
though.
He has been into dressing rooms, but when he's been into dressing rooms, it hasn't been to do the kind of thing that Steve Morgan did. And I think Steve Morgan is somebody who likes to play to the gallery.
Let's get up to the Skype. We'll find out what the Wolves fans think. Delighted to say Wayne's with us. Wayne, good evening to you,
Hello,
pal.
Wayne.
Good evening, how you doing?
Yeah, very good. Now, Wayne, I want you to respond to Darren Lewis. Darren Lewis is sitting in my studio here at my invitation. He's my guest, and then he insults my household. He insults my household by insulting you, the fans, and I'm here as a representative of the fans. I'm the seeker of truth and justice for you fans, and he says it's your fault. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that 300 fans process at the end of the Baggies fans. I don't think you can say that's all of the fans. I was quite happy with Mick McCarthy.
You see, you say 200 or 300 fans.
So he's quite happy. He's a fan. He's happy.
No. Hang on. We all watch Match of the Day on a Saturday night. We've all seen the games where the fans have voiced their opinions against Mick McCarthy. And let me tell you, when I've seen those pictures, there have not been 200 or 300 fans. I'm trying to remember the game where I think it was Swansea,
and they were behind at home. Water off a duck's back.
No. They were behind at home to Swansea. The fans were giving them all sorts of abuse and stick. Some of them left after Swansea got their second goal. They managed to turn it around and pull off the draw. And I was so pleased for Mick McCarthy on that day, because fans can be so fickle and forget what you've done for a club.
But that was the last manager.
That wasn't just 200 or 300.
All right, well, that was the last manager. Now, Wayne, tell us, please, your thoughts on your new manager, Terry Connor. Great servant to Wolves, 4.5 years there. I saw him in the press conference today, and his body language and the way he spoke did not give me a load of confidence that he's, the big figure that's needed to turn you around in the last 13 games of the season. With the greatest respect to the boy, I just didn't think he brought over his personality enough.
Okay, firstly, let me say that I'm 110% behind him. I'm not
Good.
one of those who's going to get our managers back, regardless of if he's won 5 World Cups or if he's managed the Sunday League team. I'm 100% behind him, and I hope he keeps us up for the end of the season because he's the guy that we've appointed now. I don't think we're going to get anywhere by getting on his back and saying that he's no good at this, no good at that.
That was Wayne, a Wolves fan. Chris is a Wolves fan as well. Chris has called in, Sports Night Live, and he's there with us now. Chris, good evening to you.
Hello, Chris.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed. Listen, mate, we've discussed the Mick McCarthy departure. Now we've got to discuss the Terry Connor appointment. Your verdict, please.
Well, it's a surprise to everybody. I think, as we've already said, it should have happened sooner if it was going to be Terry, but I guess they had to spread their net out and see what was going to happen. But we have all got to get behind him and give him the best possible opportunity of making a success. The person you're forgetting this has happened to recently is Chris Hughton, who turned Newcastle round and was a great success.
Wasn't recently.
Pardon?
It wasn't recently. That was 3 or 4 years ago. And Darren's pointed out that's a one in a decade type appointment that actually works. But Terry Connor, I don't know if you saw the press conference today, Chris, but he was so lacking in pushing himself forward and saying, I can do it, I'm the man, I'm the special one. It was more like sort of, well, this has sort of dropped on me like a 10-ton weight. I suppose I'll have to get on with it.
Yeah, I've met Terry a couple of times, and he's a really nice guy, a really genuine guy, and I know that the players are right behind him. So that's the first hurdle to overcome. If the players are going to back him, then we're in with the chance. But Terry's always been the second assistant manager, call him what you will, second in command, and he's not been the man in front of the media. So maybe he was a little bit wary being in front of the media spotlight for the first time, because that can be quite a daunting experience if it's not something you're used to doing. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt there, how he comes over in a press conference. Let's let him do the talking on the pitch, and if he can do it, great. If not,
do you really think you can put your Premier League future on the one phrase, let's give him the benefit of the doubt?
I think he could do as good a job as Neil Warnock could have done, who doesn't know the players as intimately as Terry does. I think he could have probably done as good a job as Steve Bruce would have done coming in.
Chris, I'm going to be devil's advocate here and say, I mean, I can't agree when you say he could have done as good a job as Neil Warnock, because Neil Warnock's got a proven track record of getting teams promoted, and he's got a proven track record of it succeeding with football teams. But I almost think something that you just said about Terry, it could be he's undoing, because number twos traditionally, they get on very well with the players. When players are left out by managers, the number two puts his arm around them and sort of says, look, don't worry, I'm sure he's done it for this reason. Now he's the man that has to make these decisions. So all of the players who you say love him very much, if they're not playing on Saturday, they could suddenly go into a little corner together and say, well, I never liked him anyway. And suddenly the relationship between him and those players, it could start to fracture. Is that a worry? Because then, if somebody else comes in, if he doesn't succeed and somebody else comes in, he could go. After all this time at the club, he could go, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I think there's always that possibility when you're number two that you can go. But he's being given the opportunity to make or break his career in terms of front-line management. But something you're saying there about Neil Warnock is a good manager for getting teams promoted, but he doesn't really achieve much other than bumble around the bottom of the Premier League when he gets teams there. And we need somebody to take us on from the bottom of the league to establish us.
I've got
exactly. Somebody to save you from relegation.
This is what my bugbear is about football fans. Forgive me for saying this, because I don't mean this about you. I'm talking generally. The arrogance of football fans. This is why Wolves are in the position they are in now. Because you get into the Premier League. Wolves are not a club awash with money.
No, but they're a big,
whatever we may say about
Steve, they're a biggish club.
No, but that's just a cliche we use about a proper football club, a big club. They do not have a lot of money. If they did, they could attract a top-line manager, they could pay him top-line wages, and they could give him a top-line budget. But they're not. And this idea, Wolves got Neil Warnock gets teams in the Premier League, but he doesn't get them into the top 10. Do you know how hard it is to do that?
Yeah,
it's a very, very hard thing to do. And fans are ungrateful in this country. They don't accept that getting into the promised land of the Premier League, lots of clubs have tried for years to do it.
Now, Chris,
and
you've really wound Darren up here.
No, because it just frustrates me. The Wolves fans are to blame for their being in this situation.
Now, you're to blame,
Chris. They are
Chris.
Ungrateful.
Yeah, but hang on, Chris. Am I right in thinking that Wolves, like many other Premier League clubs, it's the chairman who makes the decisions? Have you put undue pressure on your chairman or your board, including Mr. Moxey, to get rid of Mick McCarthy?
Not undue pressure, no. I think there was a lot of that going on behind the scenes anyway. I think Mr Morgan's patience was wearing a bit thin, such as when he went in after the Liverpool game into the dressing room, undermined Mick a bit and all those sort of stories.
Doesn't he have the answer to that question? Who is Terry Connor?
Well, he's been Mick McCarthy's assistant for the last 4.5 years. He played for 5 Football League clubs. He's a very safe pair of hands as far as the club are concerned. They like him very much there, potentially. I mean, what they're offering the man coming in is around about 150 grand to keep them in the Premier League. Now, when you compare that to the money on offer to some of the other managers at some of the other clubs, it's a pittance, really. Also, the basic way... what he's going to do is he's going to take control for the remainder of the season, largely because they've gone through 4 or 5 candidates for the job, including Alan Kirbishley twice.
Now, one event which happened today and will, of course, impinge upon the weekend, the appointment of a new Wolves manager, Terry Connor. Sorry? What did I hear you say? Who is Terry Connor? Well, I tell you what, good job I've got Darren Lewis in the studio. Darren, perhaps you could...
And they just have not been able to appoint the right man.
Why is that? Come on, Wolves are potentially a very big club in this country to offer a manager the opportunity of a platform to do things in the Premiership.
Well, I think the key word there is